We will give folks just another minute, I think, to arrive, but welcome to those of you who've been able to join us right away at 9 o'clock. We appreciate having you with us for our third installment from Dr. Bill Summers. He claims this is the best one yet, so high bar for him to jump over today, because our other sessions have also been great. So today he's going to be talking with us about what got you here won't get you there, and how successful people respond differently than perhaps others in similar situations. So Bill, take it away.
Okay. The reason I say this is the best one yet, it probably has, I mean, all of these would have applications for superintendents, principals, central office, etc. But because I read off the business side, does not say business. The business has the answer, but there are some cool mental models that I've run into because of that. At the bottom on the link, Learning Omnivores, is a larger summary that I did and posted on my Learning Omnivores website. So after this, you could go there and probably get a few more details, etc. I first heard about Marshall Goldsmith as a business coach, and I'm going, I don't know this guy. And I read this book and I said, where in the heck has this guy been? And come to find out, Marshall has been voted the top business coach 10 years in a row by the business community. He coached Alan Mulally, who went into Ford, turned around Ford from 17 billion in the hole to profitable in 3 years. He coached Alan Mulally when he was in Boeing. He's coached, I think, the CEO of Mayo Clinic. So he's a big name out there, but I didn't know him because all I was doing was reading educational stuff. So once I read the book, I said, I got to learn about this. So I contacted him, and he actually returned my phone call. I couldn't believe it. And about 3 months later, I went through the training. I had to fly out to California. But I said, holy buckets, there's some really good stuff here. When I look at our evaluation system, a lot of times for leaders in education, it's kind of like, well, the parents don't want to kill you, so you must be doing okay. And so what I'm going to describe to you is the process that he uses. And so I've been using it for like 4 or 5 years now. And I'll just tell you, the CEO of Goldsmith Organization just appointed me as the director of stakeholder-centered coaching in education. And the reason I say that is there are 1,000 business coaches out there using this method. There are 5 in education, and I brought 2 others in with me. So this is not norm for education, although some of the principals and central office and superintendents I'm working with are using it. So I see it as very authentic. So that's kind of the background. And why won't this move forward? Okay, so I always like to start with this quote. It's an African proverb: not learning is bad. And not wanting to learn is worse. So we're going to focus on how do we get those people who are learning omnivores who really want to learn, and how do we accelerate and elevate their leadership potential. So here are a few things right out of the book. What got you here, what got you here won't get you there. We really can't make people change. I mean, you can try and you can coerce, you can kick their butt. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do to get some short-term compliance. But if their system and their belief systems really don't want to change, that's pretty doggone hard. So I'm going to explain why Marshall and I get 90% success given some conditions, and Marshall gets 95%. Why? Because we choose really good clients, those who want to learn. we can only help people get better if they choose to change. If they don't want to change, they're going to sit out there. Then that, for a supervisor, whether it be a soup, principal, central office, have to figure out how do you get people to change if they really don't want to. This one was a hard one for me. Quit wasting time with people who don't want to change. I've tried all kinds of different methods, and I'll show you a dashboard of a book that I did recently with the superintendent a couple years ago. But if you don't want to change, I'll put you in a box or something that you can do, but I can't have you as a leader if you flat out don't want to change it and we're not getting the results we want. And the one I really like is nobody ever changed by coming to a training. So if you're not going to do anything with it, and that goes back to my old quote, knowledge is important, but insufficient. So here's just some opening thoughts. Think about, why are you in this profession? This is a crazy time. This is tough duty. And those people who are still in education are usually giving it the best shot, doing everything. Are you busy or are you making a difference? Hemingway's, I love this quote, never mistake motion for action. When I get, well, I'm busy. Well, we're all busy. What are you busy doing? Sometimes we're busy doing things that aren't benefiting yourself or the team. Gallup poll, people are leaving bosses, they don't leave organizations. And so I think this is going to be a fringe benefit that we have to look at in terms of superintendents and principals, central office, because if we don't build the culture where people want to be there, they tend to start looking around, because bottom line, a really good person doesn't have to work for you. They can find a job. And there are plenty of people who will take them out there. So I think the fringe benefit for superintendents, et cetera, are how do we build a culture where people want to stay and contribute? And so I think Gallup is right there. So let's change the game. Let's make it helpful to be part of a learning system. So Marshall and Drucker both said that we spend a lot of time talking about writing a to-do list. What's a to-don't list? So if you want to put, Dave, you want to put them in breakout, what would be on your to-don't list? Thinking of Federico Pareto, 80-20 rule, you'll get 80% of your results, effective results, with 20% of the things you do. 80% of the things you do, you probably only get 20%. Is there something that you're doing on a regular basis that you can stop doing or delegate or whatever, so that you make maximum impact in the behaviors that you're doing? And then we're going to get right into what this model looks like. So I don't know how many groups we have, Dave.
It'll just be one breakout room.
Okay, so let's do 3 minutes. Just what would be on your to-do list or to-don't list? Okay, what I suggest is sometimes think about in the teams that you work with, in the superintendent's cabinet, et cetera, what is it we're doing that we're not seeing results with the energy and commitment? Because this is about saving time, saving resources. So Dave, I don't know what, oh, here it is. Get rid of that. Okay, so here's another question I just want you to think about. Who do you hang with? Do you hang with people who sap you and suck you dry? Or do you hang with people who zap you and energize you? There's a Maori proverb that says, never spend time with people who don't respect you. Now, you know, and I know you don't get to choose sometimes who you spend time with. A board member walks in, a pair walks in, they're mad about whatever. And so sometimes that happens. At the same time, I start thinking about, if this is unproductive, then I got to figure out how to close it, because I've got plenty of things on my plate and people I got to see. And you know, this is a people business. This is a relationship. I get technology and it's been able to do wonderful things. At the same time, we still make with relationships. So in your quiet moments, which is probably at 3 in the morning, But who am I spending time with? Because the people you spend time with are gonna affect moods, et cetera. Are they can do with people with efficacy, or always blaming somebody else, which decreases trust. Okay, so here's Marshall Goldsmith. And Marshall, 3 things. This is why he gets 95% success. This is why I'm getting 90% success, because they said, Marshall, how do you get that kind of rating? He says, I choose good clients. We can spend time doing corrective things, and we have to, I get that. But at the same time, how do you elevate and accelerate your best people? So we've done studies, 11,000 people, 95% success rate if you have these 3 things. One is courage. If you're going to get feedback from your stakeholders, for example, as a principal, I want some teachers, custodians, whatever it is, people I trust, to be able to give me feedback, because I need unfiltered, honest feedback. I don't need a yes person. They make me crazy. And I don't need somebody sandbagging me. So when I'm working with principals or superintendents, I say, I choose stakeholders by if a person walks in my office and says, we got a problem, I may not even like them, but I know they got a problem or we have a problem because I trust them, okay? So great leaders have the courage to take, give and receive feedback. So this is high accountability. So when I do turnarounds, I try to figure out very quickly who are the 5, 6, 7 people who are going to tell me the truth. We're a family here. My answer to that is, yeah, there's a lot of dysfunctional families. I want to know what we do and who are the people who are going to, I always say, will you tell me the truth? Will you tell me if you think I'm wrong? I need to know that. So that's one. Do they have the courage to take and give and receive feedback? Number 2, do they have humility? I've used all kinds of coaching methods. If they know it all, there's nothing I can do for them. If you have all the answers, go ahead, see how it's working for you. I have to have, geez, I wish I was a better facilitator in meetings. I wish I was a better delegator. I wish I would, whatever. And on my website, I have 20 different things that are the most recent or the most required or that people have asked for feedback on. So humility. Humility is, I'm not good, or I'm not as good as I want to be. Not necessarily I can't do it. It's just I'm just not as good as I want to be. And that to me is humility, saying I need some feedback. Okay. But the third thing, and I have actually fired principals and a couple of superintendents because they don't follow through. If you're not going to follow through, how do you know if it works? Because when I'm coaching, usually what I get is it's nice to talk to someone who I don't report to. Number 2, somebody who's got more creativity because of the experiences they've had. I've been in this business for over 40 years as a principal assistant superintendent. And they like to be able to talk through what the results might be and how to respond to things that don't always go the way you want them to. So those 3 things, if you got those 3 things, I can almost guarantee a 90% success rate. So you have to choose clients carefully, because if they don't have those, that's pretty hard. Also, do they see systems? As I said, Drucker and Marshall Goldsmith have said, the person with positional authority gets to make the decision. So when I've been a principal, it may be as you as a superintendent make a decision that I don't think is right. Guess what? I don't get to make that decision. You do, because you're in a position. If it's a school issue, that's one thing. But whoever's got the positional authority gets to make the decision. Now, this comes from D. Hock, and he's the one who created Visa. I don't think it's totally fits education, but he says you gotta spend 40% managing yourself. 30% managing those you report to, so how much time are you spending managing the board? And one superintendent I was coaching, she said, I'm spending 50 to 75% of the time managing a board. I don't get to do as much on learning, etc., because I'm always managing the board because they're always mad about something. And with 7 board members, it's really tough because people get elected for different things. 15% managing those who are my colleagues or equal to me, and 15% managing down. I think it's more, 15% is low for managing direct reports. But think of it as a system. How do I manage me? And then how do I manage up? And so I've got strategies that I work with principals and superintendents on how to manage people above you to get them off the micromanaging, because everybody wants to tell you what to do. They don't have to do it, but they want to tell you how to do it. Okay, so here's a few other thoughts. Race car drivers, they're going around very fast. Look at the road, not the wall. Because if you're looking at what, yes, you have to look at what could bite you, but at the same time, you still got to keep directed on what is it we're trying to do. People don't get better without follow-up. And this is when I'm coaching, there's a thing called a learning professional plan that we can put into play that, okay, well, here's an example. Malali went into Ford. About 3 weeks in, he always had his executive team. How are we doing? I want to know if it's red, we're in trouble, yellow, cautious, or green. Everybody had green. He said, that's really interesting. We're on track to lose 17 billion, and you say everything's okay. Excuse me? And it took about 3 meetings before one guy trusted him and said, boy, I'm really having trouble in this area, this department. Molly stood up and clapped. He said, thank you. Now, okay, what are we going to do about that? And the term that Marshall coined is called feed forward. Is there anything you can do about what happened in the past? Probably not. You can learn from it. Don't do that again. But it's feed forward. What are we going to do now? So the higher up you go, and you already know this as superintendents, more of the problems are behavioral. It's not about knowledge. They usually can do that, but it's that relationship, there's behavioral issues that how are they treating the staff? What triggers a response? And if they get triggered real fast and you're impulsive, that spreads. So what we work on is whatever the trigger is, take a breath. What are your choices? Do a behavior and see if it works. The only control you have is how you respond to the issue. You just can't control the triggers that come into your office, whether it be internally or externally, is how you respond to them. And a question I ask sometimes is, am I willing at this time to make the investment occur? So AIWATT is, am I willing at this time to make some corrections or do something different? Because as Mom Mabley said, if you always do what you did, you always get what you got. Well, change the thing, it'll confuse everybody. If you change how you do things. Here's the process. When you're going to ask stakeholders for their feedback, what you want to know is ask questions, listen to what they say, thank them for the feedback. Don't justify, don't explain. Thank you for being honest and giving me feedback. Think about what they said, and then how might you respond? You don't have to respond to everything, but if it's an issue that has longer term consequences, you got to think about how you're gonna respond rather than just do it. And Cordes and Lynch said, you don't control what happens to you. The only thing you can control is how you respond to what happens to you. Then you make a change if you want to. I mean, you have to make the call on whether I'm going to change or not, and then follow up. If we change, is it making a difference? And that's where that follow up and discipline really come into play. But that's the 7 steps. Ask, listen, thank people for being honest, giving you feedback. Think about what they said. What is the plus? What's the downside, etc. And then how you're going to respond, change, and follow. So to get stakeholders, here's some people that you may want feedback from. Can they let go of the past? Sometimes we've made mistakes in the past. Okay, can you let go of it and start thinking about what we're going to do about it? And usually in this process, usually I sign on for a year, but I've done 6 months. I do some type of mid-course and a final evaluation done by an outside person, not me. Because if I'm the coach, or you're the coach, they're going to tell you what you want to hear. So I talked about 95%. What I've noticed is the leaders who get involved in this build trust that we didn't really think about when we started this process, because you're asking for feedback and you're being vulnerable. And again, I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years. Teachers are using this with students. We're doing some pilot programs right now in 2 different areas. The principals that I'm coaching, they're doing it with the teachers who they asked to be on their stakeholders. And the teacher said, I wonder if I can do this with students. So we're actually running some strategies on could students. Now, I'm a middle school, high school guy. I don't know how that would work in elementary, but high school kids can be brutal, but they also, if you trust them, can give you some pretty good information. So the direct reports are your stakeholders. Your colleagues could be stakeholders, and usually if a superintendent hires me or a principal hires me, I want to know if the supervisor, assistant superintendent thinks the goals that we choose are the right ones. And we don't want to do anything outside, the system. So to be a stakeholder, you're really trusting that person to give you honest feedback. So here's a book I wrote 4 years ago. The left side, all these are possibilities, but the left side tends to be more reflective. Some people can do it with reflectivity. At the top is stakeholder coaching, where you get some data. What is it you're working on? How will we know? And we're going to give you feedback. Your stakeholders are going to give you feedback on every couple of weeks or every month. And then on the right side, you might want to take a look at FRISK, facts, rules, implications of your behavior, suggestions, and knowledge. It is a legal process. Anderson was a lawyer and put this together before the final stage of I don't know where you're going to work, but I ain't going to be here. so it's kind of like you have to have all those. And quite frankly, I've only taken 4 teachers out in 40 years before the end of the year. Sometimes this can't go on. So that's just, I use stakeholder coaching as really the centerpiece. Sometimes, a reflective process works. So here's what I'd like you to do in a breakout session. We'll spend about 6 minutes because I want you to ask each person. Write down one thing on a piece of paper that you would like to improve. And pair up on the breakout. Ask each person, you could say, here's what I want to improve. What are some suggestions of the other 4 or 5 that are on your breakout? And write them down. And the only thing you can say is, thank you. No explanation, no justification or whatever. Then the next person can ask the 4 or 5 that are on the list. And what you're doing is getting some suggestions from people that you trust because they're your superintendent level, MASA. And so complete that process, take about 5 minutes and have each one, this is what I want to work on. I saw Marshall do this with 1,000 people. I've done it with 400 in a room, where you go find people you don't know because they're going to give you more honest feedback than somebody that you know who doesn't want to hurt your feelings. So write down one thing that you would like to get better at and ask everybody in the breakout room to give you a suggestion. One suggestion, say thank you for each one. That's all you can say. Next person does the same thing, goes around. I have used that strategy. That could be something to use with your executive team, etc. Just as I've just seen it as very positive because you start building internal support systems is what you're really trying to do. But as I say, I did it with 400 people. It was amazing, and saw Marshall do with 1,000. God. Okay, so if I'm let's just say I'm going to coach Bill, and so I always go through this with superintendent, the principal, whoever the leader is. So I'm going to ask 4 questions, and I always tell them what I'm going to ask from the people they identified. Okay, they trust them because they identified the stakeholders that they trust. So I ask this: what is Bill good at in his leadership? And a lot of times you'll get some really good stuff that they don't tell the leader. How many times are people telling you what you really do well? They walk in and say, well, this sucks, this thing. So we don't get space or have time when we tell somebody what they're doing well. So I'm always amazed because a lot of times I don't know these people. So, I mean, I don't know the stakeholders, and a lot of times I don't know the leader either. So what is Bill good at in his leadership? And I'll get that from, I've done it with as few as 4. I like to have maybe 6, but it depends on, who you trust and what your group is. And I've done 10. That gets a little bit big, but it's also good data. And then I'll tell Bill, what is Bill's challenges in his leadership? What are some things that, if Bill would work on these things, it would be helpful. The research on trying to make it better from a major flaw is not good. I'll give you that research in a minute. Okay, so now I get challenges. I usually ask this: if you were God Empress for a day and could make 1 or 2 changes with Bill, what would they be? Because now I'm getting some actions or behaviors that we might be able to work on. And then the last question is I ask, is there anything else I should know? And here's the reason I asked that. I was called in by a superintendent in Alamogordo, New Mexico. And we're going to talk about who's going to be the principal of the high school because it was not doing well. And the board had taken the superintendent out. And well, anyway, so I asked the board, I said, if I find somebody who really needs to leave the organization, are you willing to take them out? I got it. We're a family here, because they're all so many interconnections. I get that. But if it isn't working and we need to replace them, I just wanted to know if they were willing to do that, the board. And so a couple other questions I asked, I know it caused them a little bit of reflection. So about a day later, I get on a plane, go back to Austin, Texas, and I get a call from the board chair and says, we've decided to go to a different route. And I said, really, what'd you decide? Well, we're going to take the district AD and make him the principal and find another superintendent. And so I called my friend who called me to come in. And she said, well, what you didn't know was the HR director is married to the AD. And, I just want to know what the interconnections are. So I always ask that question about, is there some alliance that I need to know? Is in another district, the soup was a friend of mine. I went there as an assistant soup and found out that the other assistant soup, his secretary was married to the board chair. I said, Mark, you can't win this triangle. And he got fired within 6 months. And of course, then I quit too, because I was a friend of Mark. So sometimes there's stuff at play that you don't know. I try to surface it. A lot of times you won't know that and you get in there, but you know, there's always alliances that you're trying to smoke it out ahead of time so you know what you're dealing with. So those are the 4 questions, and then I take all that, they give it to me either personal interviews or emails or a phone call. I take all the information, I put it in themes. And here's 5 or 6 things that they really like about your leadership. Here's 5 or 6 things, or maybe 3 or 4, that they wish was changed. Here are a couple of recommendations. I usually get 3 to 5 recommendations from the stakeholders. And then I sit down with Bill and say, so Bill, what do you want to work on? What is something that you think would really make a difference in your leadership and the relationship with your team? And we usually what I get with especially somebody who's very good, they'll say, well, I got to do 5 or 6. I said, you get 1, and if I'm in a good mood, you might get 2. But if you can't do 1 or 2, you can't do 5 or 6. And you know, if you do 1 or 2, a lot of times that affects other things. So we start very focused on 1 or 2 things and see if we can make progress, getting feedback. And so that usually starts. But plus, you've got some other things that you can work on if it comes up. So that's the process. I sit down, and then the Bill will go back out to the stakeholders and say, I've sat down with the coach. Here's 2 things I want to work on. I want you to give me feedback on, am I getting closer and better, or am I farther away? And I will be asking you that in 2 to 3 weeks to get some feedback, to give me an indicator. But those are short-term leading indicators. I usually don't get much movement until 3 to 6 months, which is why I usually only take on somebody for at least 6 months. But what we have found in these 11,000 that we've done with Goldsmith's training is that at 6 months, we get some really good movement. At 9 to 12 months, it even accelerates more. And so here's how we evaluate. On a scale of -3 to +3, where would you rate Bill on his leadership after 3 months or 6 months? Or 9 months when the outside people are doing it. And -3, he was bad before, he really sucks now. On a +3, he was good, but he's walking on water. I have gotten consistently with principals +2.0 to 2.5. It blew me away by them, because what happens is those stakeholders become your advocates out there. He's really working on this, and here's some behaviors that we see changing. So it has more effect than just the individual. So that's really the process, and then we work around that. I'm able to bring research, et cetera, to the table, and other things that I've done over the year. So let's see, where am I? Okay, so, and I'll open up for questions here in a minute, but at the end of a lot of workshops, people say, so what do you want? What do you want to have happen? What do you want? And so here's what I want.
And now,
Whoops.
And now to honor America and salute the men and women serving our country with our national anthem, please welcome, as voted by you, the fans, our winner of the Toyota Get the Feeling of a Star promotion, Natalie Gilbert.
This is an 8th grade student.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the starlight stars? Stars like last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous
I don't know Mo Cheeks. I'm not a big NBA guy, but that's what I want. That's what I want for kids, colleagues, and community. I want somebody when I go down or I'm having a tough day, I want somebody to be able, somebody I can talk to, somebody who's gonna step in and say, it's gonna be all right. And I'm gonna help you through that. And you can't give what you don't have. So the better off we have superintendents, central office, principals, it's about kids. It's about our staff. How do we make them, help them be better? So that's what I want. And I'm gonna keep doing it. Wherever. So here's research and learningontheboards.com. There's book summaries on there. I want to make a plug for two, Marshall Goldsmith and Sally Helgeson. Sally is the premier women's leadership guru in America. They wrote a book called How Women Rise. And there's a book summary on Learning Omnivores under resources, what we're reading. And then Sally came out with her newest book called Rising Together. And I think Lori and Deb have contacted Sally about doing some work next year. And I'm really, really happy because she is just dynamite. She's a great coach, and we need all the leadership we can get. And I would suggest that we need more women leadership in places. We've certainly done it. I'm not, I won't give my political view, but anything we can do to promote women leadership as well as everybody's leadership. That's what I want. So here's some other books that I've written. Something that interests me. I write so I can understand it better. Not that I have the answer, but I have some answers. So here are a few things that Marshall. Oh, what I should say is, sometimes you just kind of fall into it. I didn't know Marshall when I read his book. I just got, oh my God, this is really cool. Well, Marshall is 73 now, and he has now moved from San Diego to Nashville because his daughter is a professor at Vanderbilt. And Marshall said, I've made enough money. I've worked for some big companies. I'm now going to do knowledge philanthropy. And he said, all of us that have been coaches for him get all of his information for nothing. So if there's something I can do to help you with that stuff, Marshall has given us total reign to pass it on to try to help. And because, it's kind of an educator that stepped forward, that's why they gave me, okay, get out there and do it. And I've done some pro bono work with some nonprofits as well. And so I'm really grateful for him saying we can have everything. So sometimes we're overmanaged. We want everything. We're afraid, to make a mistake. Well, good luck with that one. We're going to make mistakes. It's how we recover. Recovery is more important than perfection. Remember that. You can't be mistake proof. Here's another one. I don't care what you've read. I don't care what your degree is. I don't even care where it's from. All I want to know as a leader, can you make a positive difference in people's lives? That's really what it comes down to. Because in education, sometimes it's a last shot for a lot of kids. And so I obviously working mostly in the inner city, et cetera, and going up next to the tracks, literally next to tracks. We got a lot of work to do for a lot of kids. You can't help everybody, but doggone it, you can do something for that starfish or whatever, So give it a shot. So somebody asked me, what do you want on your tombstone? Which I thought, God, do I have to look at that? And I finally came up with this. He gave it his best shot. That's all. That's all I can say. You know, I'm not going to sit out and watch the world go by. So I think that's it. Here, it's hard to read, but he just posted this a few months ago. 5 benefits of reading, which is about what MASA EdReads is. I think what we're trying to do is boost the ability, add repertoire to solve problems, help decision making based on the best information we have at the time, increase your confidence and competence. And with the reading, you can do more communication to the community. Because I always look at the community and they're always in a 20, 30-year lag. What was good enough for them, it ain't good enough for you, for the kids. That's what got us here, ain't gonna get us there. It's a whole different world. And I'm always reminded by Postman's quote, children are messages we send to the future that we will not see. So, we got about 5 minutes. Any questions? Or maybe we got a little more than that, maybe 10 minutes. You can ask me a question, I'll just make it up.
Well, while people are contemplating that, Bill, I just want to extend our thanks for another great session. We had some really good conversation in our breakout room. Molly, I'm going to send you a thought because, of course, when you're in the middle of the conversation, that's when the breakout room closes and we aren't able to continue that. Anything, Todd or Jenna or Molly, from you?
Oh, it's just that it's long term is how do we, I just don't, now this is going to sound terrible, and I've been on 5 different college faculties, and we do a lot of research and theory, but these are, what I'm trying to do is, these are practical things you can do tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
If I can't use, again, knowledge is important, but it's insufficient. I got to be able to do something with it. And that's why I think the behavioral approach of Goldsmith and stakeholder coaching. Now, I'm not, I was in a think tank that developed cognitive coaching. So I get reflection and all that, and there's other models that we can use, which is another thing when I'm coaching right now. I got, I think, 5 people I'm coaching. So I'll draw from wherever I can that'll help anybody move forward. So I see a hand up.
Jenna is being so polite. Go ahead, Jenna.
Hi, Bill. I really
Hi.
appreciate the fount of knowledge that you are and what you can share with us. Thank you so much. You
Thank
had
you.
talked earlier about what are the not to-do list. And what I'm wondering is, what is one of the most common traps you see leaders fall into, and what behaviors are most important to avoid?
Well, I think, well, let me give an example. When I moved from an AP to a principal, I was good as an AP. So I tended to do more AP work as a principal, and I didn't make that shift. And as an assistant to a superintendent, there's a shift because you're looking at a wider thing. And so one of the things that a lot of times comes up with coaching a superintendent or a principal is, especially new ones, is how do I leave something I'm comfortable with and I'm really good at? So here's an analogy I use. If you're really good at putting out fires, you continue to put out fires. My suggestion is you have to teach somebody else to always put out the fire. Not that you won't participate, but once you take it away from somebody too quickly, they don't get the experience. And I just posted, I forget where I got it, but a really good leader prepares another leader who prepares another leader. So Noel Tichy, who was the head of Codenville, the creative arm at GE, said leaders have two responsibilities. Number one, be the head learner. Number two, develop other leaders. So it can't be just the superintendent leading the pack. You just don't have the time or energy. You just can't do it. You got to have, how do you develop the team? And so a lot of times when I'm looking at it, working with a super or principal, how do you develop that other person so that they develop those skills? We need more quality people in education, and we're losing them like crazy right now. It's like 50% of teachers are saying heck with it. So I wrote a blog years ago on don't tell me we don't have enough teachers. Wool feathers. We have plenty of teachers. They're choosing not to teach. That's a different issue. So sometimes it is trying to figure out what is the real question here. So sometimes we solve the wrong problem. So I don't know if that's helping answering your question, but it depends on if you can't develop other leaders, it all flows into you, and I don't care who you are, but sometimes you just burn out. So unfortunately, when you're really good at putting out fires, some of us become arsonists. If I have a fire and I'm good at it, hey, I'll jump in there, which is good, but you got to develop more people that can come to the table. That's why I like Mahali's. Right now, I've got a publisher who's interested in because I've come out of retirement 5 times. He said, "How do you do turnaround?" And I hate the word turnaround because every school I've been in has quality people already there. It's really how you unleash. Matter of fact, you might want to look at my book summary, Unleashed. It's written by 2 women who say it's about unleashing the talent and the potential. It's not about always doing everything for everybody. And so how do we unleash that talent that's there? And in turnarounds, I said, well, the first thing is I put on iron underwear. But I'm going to get eaten from all sides. The second thing is I use a firefighting metaphor that Larry Cuban wrote for superintendents years ago at Stanford. He said, the first thing you got to do is put out fires. If there's fires happening, you got to put them out. It's got to be safe physically and emotionally. The second stage is systems thinking, fireproofing. How do you get systems in place so fires don't start as often? You're not going to stop every fire, but you want to get systems in place so not everything burns the building down and ends up in the superintendent's office. But the third stage, and once you got that, it takes, this takes a couple of years. The third stage is, where do you start fires? Who are your learning omnivores that are ready to rock and roll? Because giving them some money, go get them. Just let me know what you're doing so I can learn. Because you've got those people, so you're unleashing that talent. But I'd recommend not only Sally's work, but I can't remember the 2 authors, but it's called Unleashed. And I'd have to look and see if I already posted that or not, but it just came out with 2 women. And the whole context is, it's not about you, it's about them. And that's a major shift. And Marshall talks about that a lot. It's not about you. How do you develop them? So thank you for the question, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm taking lots of notes. My Post-its are multiplying.
Well, you got my email, so just put MASA on there so I know it's not some scam from Hotmail or something.